My grandfather was not a good man around this time of his story. He was really what you would call a disappointment. My mother even tells me, back when he was in his prime, he was hanging out at the Res's skate park with some friends, and just overall, having the time of his life. They were drinking and trying new things, just teens being teens. It's said that they saw a figure walking in the woods. They began to harass and yell, thinking it was a person. It gets fuzzy here, but he said that it began to chase them, maybe 500 feet where they ended up behind the school in a little shed, closed the door and hid. I guess it saw them and ended up knocking around the shed and wouldn't leave. He and his friends hid from whatever it was till morning. Prior to when I was born, my mom was in a similar mental situation as my grandfather. This one is shorter. The story goes, my mother and aunt were hanging out in an empty house, drinking, and doing other things that teens do. Chillin'. And then they hear a very loud cackle, like laugh. They stopped everything and waited to see if somebody would come out. My aunt, being who she is, laughed, and once again it started up. My mother had freaked out and begged her to stop. Just then, a beer bottle flew past my aunt's head, busted in the back wall. I don't recall what she did after, but I'm assuming they ran. When my uncle was around 2 or 3, he had gone missing for a few hours, and they ended up finding him where the res meets the forest. They asked him what happened, and he just said, I was playing with the little people. The little people are a legend of a lot of tribes, but have represented differently. My people portray them as tricksters, who also sometimes mean bad luck, or even death. Again, these stories are passed down to me by my elders and mom. My writing isn't the best. I still ain't got the point of posting. However, I hope you were able to understand at least some of this. Thank you. So, as a preface to this story, I was driving on the State Road 54, a road in Florida that goes all throughout the state, and for the most part, used to be all woods. It was 3:45 a.m., and I was driving to my friend's house, who lives just 45 minutes away, to carpool to our job in a city, about an hour and a half away from where he lived. I was leaving the city that I lived in, and was driving through more heavily wooded areas at a red light. As I was waiting for the light to turn green, I saw the glow of 2 bright orange eyes. The woods were approximately 25 feet from the main road. The eyes got closer, like it hadn't seen me, and it looked around 6 to 7 feet tall. Thin, quite thin. It was too dark to see any features, but when our eyes connected, the thing bolted into the woods. It just didn't look human, frankly, and at this point, I thought it might be a bear or something, as it was standing on its 2 back legs. And I mean, that son of a gun was quick for its size. I have no idea what I saw, but the profile seems to look like a Skinwalker or a Wendigo. I have no idea. Any possible help or info to explain what I saw would greatly be appreciated. This story is from my mother, her friend, and her friend's daughter. They also experienced this. I was asleep at the time. My family has a caravan, or trailer, for those in the USA, that we go and stay in for the holidays. It's up in the Victorian High Country, here in Australia. It's pretty remote, with some small towns and farms. One night, at 3 a.m., my mother had gone out to the communal bathroom block. Her friend and friend's daughter were also awake. While mother was in the bathrooms, she heard what she described to me as the most horrible, inhuman growl, scream, echoing all throughout the valley. It was nothing that she had ever heard before. Not any of the common animal sounds she had heard there either, like deer calls, possums, bulls from nearby farms. She said that she was terrified. My mother's friend and her daughter had heard it too. They thought my mother was going to be murdered or something. Even our dog was barking. Mother came back safe, and they all spoke about how they had heard it. Somehow I slept through it all. I was only 11 at the time. I've always been curious. I want to know what it sounds like, and what it was, although my mother tells me to this day that I should not want to know. Whenever I'm there, awake at night, it's quiet. I listen. I've been told that my situation might be a skinwalker. I don't know if that is true, so I'm here where others know more than I do. I don't know if this has any bearing on anything, but my ancestry is Native American and Irish, with a touch of Scottish. My father was Native, his father Cherokee, and mother Mattapony. My mother was a Lynch from the Lynch clan, with a Scottish ancestor back in there too. I will try and make this short, and can fill in anything if somebody wants more information. This pretty much started in the 2000s, with some weird events. We had all kinds of, paranormal things happen. Typical experiences like objects moving, etc. It was me and my 3 children. Then, I picked up a stalker who would come to the house, dressed in all black. He would be wearing a black motorcycle helmet, would be looking in windows day or night. Sometimes he drove a black vehicle, still wore his helmet. No plates on either. My neighbor chased him off a few times, and if I saw him by the time I could get outside, he would usually be driving away. I came home a few times to weird things like every bowl or spoon in the house missing, all appliances on and plugged in, but all doors and windows closed and locked. Police did not believe me. At the same time, we were experiencing a lot of paranormal activity. Disembodied voices, seeing people walk across the room, doors opening and closing, cabinets, shower curtain being jerked open when the shower, and nothing there. We did not tell the police about those events. Then, one night, my girls, about 10 and 12 at the time, woke me up screaming that there was a man at the window. I went to the room. The blind was down, and I thought they had a nightmare because of what was going on. I pulled the blind up, and there was a man standing there. I did not get a good look, but he had to be very tall to look in the window, so I dropped the blind and called the police. We went downstairs to the family room and waited. There was a door in the converted basement, and the knob kept jiggling, like somebody trying to get in. We sat in horror for 3 hours before the police finally showed up. Outside, the girls' window, they found a blue piece of construction paper with a circle and 3 smaller ovals created out of a cornmeal-like paste. They figured it meant that me and 3 children. They did not believe me about any of it because it just snowed and there were no footprints. Not long after this, I became ill and was later on diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, and myofascial pain syndrome. The harassment continued as well, and all the paranormal activity. I don't know what else to call it. Fast forward a few years, my children grew up and moved away, and I remarried. Moved about 5 minutes away. In the beginning, not much happened. I actually felt great, physically and mentally. And then it all started again. We saw people sneaking around, windows and doors, weird things occurring on the inside of the house, paranormal type things. We have seen orbs come in one bedroom while we lay there awake, pause, and go out the other window. And during all of this, my health went downhill again. This is over the last 8 years. What is the weirdest is a few times a year we hear a howl, almost like a wolf right outside. I lived in the Montana wilderness for a short while when I was in my early 20s. I have had plenty of wolf encounters. It sounds similar to a wolf, but it is louder, longer, not as guttural, I think. It is always right in the middle of the night. No specific time. It has happened at 8 p.m. as well, and woke us up. Definitely not a dog. Our dogs and cats freak out as well as the neighborhood dogs when it happens too. Then, the smell the next day is like a skunk outside but earthier. Not as rancid, if that makes sense. But it is not a pleasant smell at all. So, I just wanted to stop and have a nice, comfortable, normal life as much as that possible. Someone said this might be a skinwalker. I personally have not done anything that I know of, but maybe my parents did. I say this because my mother once told me a story after I was born. They moved down to Mississippi, where my dad was from, a very small town. The house they were to rent was not ready, so they were allowed to stay in the schoolhouse. This was a very rural area. My uncle, Dad's brother, was with them, and he was going to stay with them. I don't know if it was the first night or what, but one night, they awoke to the chanting of "Bring us the baby." They looked out, saw white figures moving in and out of view, all chanting they wanted the baby. My uncle thought it was the KKK, because they were native, and went out and told them to leave and shot at them. He kept shooting, but hit nothing, and told my mother they had no legs that he could see. He went back in, and they barricaded the door. This was long before cell phones, so they couldn't call anybody, and there was no phone in the school. They sat there, backs against, over desks, as it went on until daybreak. My uncle left then, and did not hear from him for 3 years. My dad would tell me he's not going to talk about it, and if you asked my uncle, he would leave. My mother only spoke of it one time, and refused after that. I'm not saying I'm special in any way, shape, or form, but could all this be connected? Can a deal be made and then I and my children go through this because it was not completed? I'm tired. I am to the point to where I look at my husband and say, "Oh, look, the comb is moving across the sink by itself again." Just stupid things. I'm working from home now, and it is non-stop wearing on me. We just heard the howl recently, and had the smell after that. We lost our refrigerator, garage door opener, dryer, and my laptop. To give a better idea of how things are, back in the beginning of November, I was reading on my Kindle on the couch. My husband was at his desk behind the couch area. My desk was in front of me to the left of the fireplace. It was about 8:30 at night. A white weasel ran up the left side of my desk, ran across my desk, a big old metal tanker desk, and jumped down the right side by the fireplace, and just disappeared. My dog on my lap saw it, and a Siamese and Maine Coon saw it. All went over to investigate. They were all fluffed up, looked really disturbed, and checked out the desk area for about an hour. The dog hid initially after checking it out. He's not very brave. I was told the white weasel was a bad sign, but really gave no more thought to it. But a week later, my father passed away. He was in good health, so it was sudden and a shock. We have cameras inside and out, and the great room cam froze when this happened. I rarely get things because the cameras want to freeze up and have to be restarted. I do have one night where we caught orbs doing weird things in the same room, recorded on a motion-activated camera. Anyway, I'm sorry for this being so long. I don't know if any of this is related. All I can say at this point is I'm beyond frustrated.